Hello, everyone. I'm Chris. I've got a few minutes here to talk about stewardship, and you may ask the question, we all come from different backgrounds. You may ask the question, why? Stewardship, there's a lot of different topics we could talk about at a leadership conference or whatever you want to call this, church conference, family conference. There's a lot of things you can talk about. I mean, all the different topics that are in church world. We could be talking about prayer. We could be talking about marriage. We could be talking about addiction ministries. We could a lot of things we can talk about. Why this idea of stewardship? And then Corey was talking a minute ago about know your why. And the way that my mind works is if you back away any kind of biblical principle or any kind of biblical mandate or biblical even suggestions, some of the things are not necessarily an obedience thing or a sin thing. It's actually just wisdom. I back it down into what, if I go why, I do the 2-year-old thing, but why? But why does that matter? But why? For me, it all goes back to stewardship. So when I ask the question, when I bring up you just heard that when Travis said, Chris is going to talk about stewardship. I don't know where your mind went. We all come from different backgrounds. You may be immediately thinking money. Maybe 50% of this room automatically thought stewardship, and you thought, get out of debt. You immediately thought save, or budget, or generosity, or for many people, the next building campaign, the next giving campaign. You hear stewardship, and you're like, okay, they're building a building. I kind of want to reframe that. So I've got 2 major objectives today. I'm thinking, what kind of deposit can I make in your life? What kind of value can I add to this room and those of you that are online? What kind of value can I add in just a few minutes? For me, it's twofold. One, what I want to do is I want to make sure you can't take anybody where you're not at. And so it's like I want to help you as an individual first on how you could win in stewardship. And then I also want to give you some practical handles on what are some few steps that you can do to help others in the area of stewardship. I really do believe this. I think if you're not serious about stewardship ministry in your church, you are guilty of malpractice. You're literally performing negligence. I know it's strong, but I got your attention. That was my wow. I don't mean that to be harsh. I just want you. I want to add a little bit of intensity to the topic because it really is that important. Now, if you are thinking of saving and investing in Roth IRAs and you didn't teach that over the last 12 months, I'm not talking about that. So I think it's important that we define stewardship before we go any further. Number one is, what in the world does stewardship mean? You guys ask amazing questions. Stewardship is, and this is the best, I've been in stewardship conversations for a decade with the most respected stewardship names in the country. And so we've tossed around a lot of definitions, and this is by far the best one. So if you're wondering what the best definition ever of stewardship is, it's right now. And I didn't come up with it, so I'm not even bragging. It's managing God's blessings, God's way, for God's glory. That has the what in it, it has the how in it, and it has the why in it. God's blessings, what? It's not just money. It's everything. It's your time. It's your energy. It's your influence. Like Pastor Corey said, it is that hour and 15 minutes or hour and 20 or some of you hour and 55-minute service. You've got this time. You have this thing that God's given you. He's blessed you with the ability to pour into those sheep during that time. How are you going to steward? How are you going to manage that blessing His way and for His glory? So that's the what, God's blessing. We're going to talk about all those different what's in your life. The how, thank God He gives us the how, right? Is God's way. That means by the Bible. So how do we handle money? Good thing you asked. There's 2,350 verses about money, wealth, and possessions in the Bible. So we don't have to wonder. So we're going to manage His blessings. One of those blessings happens to be dollars and cents. How do we do that? God's way. Okay, what does that mean? How do I, when it comes to budgeting? I'm supposed to have a plan. Okay, Proverbs 29:18, right? Luke 14:28. Those things are talk about budgeting and talk about planning ahead of time. What about savings? Well, it's in there, Proverbs 21:20. In the house of the wise, right? We all want to be wise, is choice food and oil, but fools gulp it all down. So it's God's way, and then it's also, and this right here, this last, the why, if we don't add this to the definition, it no longer is stewardship. So if it's manage God's blessings God's way, and we just stop, oh, that's sweet. And you don't define the why for God's glory, then by default, it's for your glory. And the second that it's for your glory, it's no longer stewardship. You're now no different than somebody who's completely lost, who happens to know a couple biblical principles, puts them into place, but they have no relationship with God and it's not for him. So therefore, it is no longer stewardship. So now that we've redefined what we're talking about, we're not just talking about saving, we're not just talking about investing, we're not just talking about being generous, we're not just talking about budgeting, we're talking about managing God's blessings, God's way, for God's glory. Now, what are those blessings in your life? Who are your blessings? Those of you with children, how are you managing those children for God? For his glory, not for yours, not so they can do chores for you, not so they can make you look good in the community, not so they can go to a prestigious school, not so they can be well-mannered and say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, so you look like a good parent. For his glory. That girlfriend or boyfriend or that marriage relationship, they're not yours, you don't own them, but you're managing that relationship for him, his way, and for his glory. Your influence. Maybe some of you have an influence of over 8 people, influence over 100 people, influence over thousands of people. Doesn't matter, there's influence. He's allowed you to influence a small pocket of people, and how well are you stewarding it? What about your own life? What about your body? What about your health? Just you as a general, like managing you. If you were the CEO over You Incorporated, would you fire you? Because you are. He's given you are CEO. You get to manage yourself for his glory, for the King of Kings. He's the master. You guys all know Matthew 25, 14 through 30. Well, those bags of gold, the principle still applies. Let's take the bags of and stop. Put something else in the bag. It's not gold. What is it? Let's put something else in there. So if you're managing your health, you're given, or talents, and says no talents. We're going to do my health. Okay. Which one are you? Which one of the servants are you? So, oh snap! I had some Burger King for lunch. Dang it! But here's the deal. This is not about shame. Okay. This is just about a healthy awareness of how well you're planning. So for me, when it comes to health, it's just like, hey, you need to budget like your plan for how you're going to, okay, I'm going to have a cheat day, or I'm going to have a cheat meal, okay, and then I'm going to make sure I eat healthy 80% of whatever it is. Think through it. How are you managing for the King of Kings and Lord of Lords? And if he convicts you that even one cheat day is not good, then don't do it. That's between you and God. And so I just want to pull us up to 30,000 feet and ask ourselves, what does stewardship really mean, and how well am I doing? I don't think you can take people somewhere where you personally are not at. I was asking myself the question, I said, what are some terms? So if I'm trying to draw these parallels, not just in the parable of the talents, but draw these parallels between some of the financial concepts, negative financial concepts, and some positive financial terms. Here's some of the negative terms that are out there. You may understand some of these. Financial stewardship no-nos is what I put on here. Debt. It's like bondage, right? It's just a negative thing. Entitlement. Oh, we hate that word, don't we? It's that one generation that's entitled, but it's not us, is it? Whatever, right? We are all entitled. And the older you get, you just get better at covering it up. Greed, right? Greed. Beware of all types of greed, right? What's one type of greed? Over-saving. Hoarding, putting your security in a big, huge savings account. That's a sin, in my opinion, and unwise. You're putting your security in money instead of God. Interest paid is another no-no. right? Economics 101, interest paid is a penalty, interest received is a reward. It's not that hard. Low ROI, return on investment. I want to encourage all of us, myself included, to ask yourself, what is the return on investment? What's the ROI on every single thing you do? When you wake up, what is the ROI? And stop doing the things with no ROI and keep doing the things that have great ROI. It's an evaluation. It goes back to what Corey said. You're evaluating what's productive in your life, gets you towards your goals, and what doesn't. And remember, your goals for it to be stewardship, your goals need to be for God's glory. If it's for your glory, it might be like good goal setting and hitting your goals. It might not be a bad thing. It's just not stewardship. Don't call it that. Okay, some financial stewardship yeses. A lot more positive. Like, man, who brought this guy in, right? Budgeting, right? It's a yes. Hey, man, we budget, we plan. Like we happen to our money. Our money didn't happen to us. Savings, no debt, investing, interest earned, margin, generosity, high ROI. Those are all things that are yes. Those are positive things. You think about like, anyone here ever got like a brand new car? Got a brand new car? Like, it might not even just be brand new to you, but if you got like it's funny, I'm talking about this and I say brand new car and everyone's like, I didn't do it, I promise I didn't do it. This is a different point, okay? We're not gonna talk about the fact that you lost 25% as soon as you went off the ride, and 70% in the first 4 years. But anyway, but a new car to you, right? It's got the nice smell. Maybe you got a new mower, like a brand new riding mower and you sat on it for the first time. And what do? You make sure you put it in the garage. Not only did you put it in the garage, then you put like a nice little tarp over it, make sure that like no spiders get in there, or like nothing can touch it, and it keeps its original color, right? Even these shoes that I'm wearing, they're like really, really, really white. And I don't know if the cameras can pick them up, but I got really, really white shoes on right now. And I got them a couple weeks ago. My son's bought them for me. Supposedly they're a nice shoe. I have no idea. But I remember like the first couple like times I wore them, I was like this around the house, like so scared I was going to get them. And then I told my kids, I said, these are cement only shoes. Like cement only, like, hey, can you let the horses out? No, I really can't. It's cement only, so you're gonna have to let the horses out. And then today I realized, here we are a month later, I just literally went out golfing in the rain in these. And so you got to ask yourself that moment where you're like, man, if I were to pass around, and those of you that collected baseball cards back in the day, if I were to pass around right now a Mickey Mantle rookie card, the most expensive baseball card ever, mint condition, and if you knew the fact that if you just hit one of the corners for just a second, it goes from 10,000 to 1,000. If you just hit one of the corners and it's not mint condition, you're going to ruin it. So what would we do? Picture yourself. You're passing it. Pass it to your neighbor right now. Like practice passing it to your neighbor right now. Like you're super careful. You're like, oh my goodness, I am like so careful with this. I care so deeply about this item. Think about that love and care that you have for that item. Put yourself there, whatever that thing is in your life, that tangible thing, a brand new $2 bill, and like I haven't seen one of these in a while, like, well, just put that right there. Be careful. Right? I'm going to bring up 4 things that I think that you probably are not handling with that much care. Number 1, are you stewarding? Think about this. Are you stewarding like the thing that I just said that I put in your hand, whatever that thing is? Are you stewarding as a leader your mind? Are you stewarding your mind? Think about it. If I was to pass around a brain and it signifies your mind inside your head, inside your noggin, are you stewarding your mind? What are you allowing in your mind? What are the thoughts that you're allowing yourself to be exposed to? And I'm trying really hard not to pick on media, but it's really hard not to. But what kind of people are speaking into your life? Are they pulling you up or are they pushing you down? They have a victim's mentality or a victor's mentality. your mind. How are you stewarding your mind as a leader? You're not going to be able to have a healthy church intellectually unless you are learning new things. Are you stewarding? Your mind has the ability to retain knowledge and to retain resourcefulness. And whatever your area of expertise, are you learning? Are you growing? Otherwise, you're like the servant who just hid his talent into the ground. Or are you taking your 5 and making 5 more? Are you stewarding? So we think about it in money. We think about, okay, I got $100 this week. I'm like, man, if I were to be really wise with that, that could be like 10 grand in 20 years, and that's compound interest, and you think about it that way. But what about the little bit of $100 worth of knowledge every week? What that could do over 20 years. Your heart, if we were to pass around a physical heart, like a not like the gross kind, but like something you'd get in a science class, okay? And that signifies your heart. And we're to pass around like, what is going on with your heart? What are the things that are you allowing yourself to stay sensitive to spiritual things? Or are you starting to get really calloused? If you're pulling up, those of you that are in like mid-level ministry positions or higher, is your whole entire life in executive meetings and senior level meetings and you haven't touched real pain in a while? I was moved by Corey when he said, a church for Kurt. What told me, when that moved him, it told me that he's been in proximity to that pain. You can't feel it like that as you're talking about it months and months later or years and years later and not be moved like that unless you had some proximity to pain. And I would just say your ministry heart, if you're stewarding it well, you've been around some pain. If you haven't been around pain for a while, I would challenge you and say that you maybe are not stewarding your heart. You're only around things that are actually callousing your heart. How about your soul? Your soul, you're deep down like unction. Unction's a word for like anointing, your soul. Are you allowing yourself to be muddied by people in your life that are like momentum suckers out of your life? They're people that you've given a ton of time to, they never stick to your advice. They never do anything. They just literally just suck the life out of you, and so your soul is just drained. Are you abiding? Did you know that passage about abiding? That word abide in that passage in the vine and the branches, the word abide is repeated 11 times in like 6 verses. You know, anytime they repeat in the Bible, you're like, okay, this is probably important. 11 times. However, I was talking to somebody yesterday. Was it yesterday? No, it was like 4 or 5 days ago. And gosh, time flies. It was like a different 2 states ago. She was talking to me all about this neurotransmitter stuff that she's like the way the brain works, and that's the reason why I'm discouraged, and like put so much focus on her brain activity and how the brain was just like, and I'm like, oh, honey, your brain is like a tool. Jesus is the only hope there is. Like you figuring out your brain, like that's great, but it was just so much hyper focus on the power of the brain. I'm like, there's no power in it. It's just a tool that Jesus used. I mean, find out the knowledge. But man, she put so much power in it. Her soul was just, you can tell there was no abiding. There was abiding in science books. Anyway, moving on. And then I mentioned your body, your body. I mean, how are you stewarding your body? So four adjustments. So those are 4 areas, 4 adjustments we may need to make today. When it comes to your mind, I would just say we probably need to maximize our margin. We all have margin. There's 168 hours a week, and those of you that are killing in here probably work 57. You know, if you've ever gone to Haiti and you see that they walk for like 3 or 4 hours to get to work, then they work for 8 or 10 hours and they walk through. That's no margin. I mean, they have margin to think, I guess, when they're walking all that distance. But we have tons of margin, and I am so insanely sad at how the church in America today, and I don't mean this mean or shame. Let's call it out. The church is being lulled to sleep by Netflix. The devil doesn't necessarily want to trip us all up with rape and murder and adultery. He just wants to lull us asleep. Just a little distraction. And I read that in C.S. Lewis a long time ago, but he just wants to rock us to sleep. And I swear the church today is just watching people die and go to hell while we're all watching Netflix. I'm not saying don't watch Netflix. I'm just saying hey, if you're watching it 10 hours a week, something's wrong. Maximize your margin. Number 2, for the heart, it'd be hitch on to hurt. Hitch on to hurt. Man, you see hurt somewhere, and those of you that are leading large organizations, you can't do this for all of them. There's a great Andy Stanley quote that says, do for one what you wish you could do for many. I wouldn't hyper-focus on one. I would try to do 2 or 3, but I would hitch on to that hurt. It is the best thing for you. The Bible says in Proverbs 11:25, those who refresh others themselves are refreshed. If you need to be refreshed, it's probably because you've been hyper-focusing on yourself, and you need to be focusing on others. That's where all the refreshment comes. Next one, for your soul, I'd just say stop the soul suckers. Those people that are just sucking you dry. Find another, give them that last talk. Here's my last 10%, I love you, but our relationship needs to look different, effective immediately. Here's what you're doing to me. Just call it out. Know this, that with every no, there's relational fallout. Anytime you ever say no to anyone, there's relational fallout. But it is the best thing for you. Go back to the definition. You're managing God's blessings, which is your energy, your time, your giftings, right? God's way for his glory. So therefore, the best way for you to have the most amount of not influence, but impact is that one person or 2 people or 3 people are not draining you. So give them that last 10%, help them, pray with them, love on them, say you're going to pray with them more. But they can't be sucking your soul dry. And the last one, obviously I was going for the alliteration here. It's kind of stupid, but for the body, it's, I wrote this when I was really tired, so. And some of you are drinkers, some of you aren't. So this is budget the barbells, burgers, and bourbon. And the whole point is, your fitness, your drinking, your eating, just whatever. Those of you that drink, just make sure you've got a plan. You know what you're doing, and you are progressing. And you can tell yourself, at the end of the day, end of the week, end of the month, I feel like I am managing this temple God's way and for his glory. That's between you and him. When it comes to the people that you hang around with, this is free. I got this from Chris Hodges. He said this. He said, the people that you surround yourself with, so you're managing your influence, right? You're managing your team, who you surround yourself with. We all have teams in here of some sort. Some are paid teams, some of them are non-paid teams. You want to surround yourself with 4 people. Okay, this is stewarding your teams. I am purposely not talking about money because my biggest takeaway today is that you would not think stewardship is just money. That's my point. I don't think of it as just money. These principles of God owning everything, right? Psalm 24:1, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, or all it contains, another translation says. So he's the owner. So think about that. Visualize, he's the owner and you are managing for him everything in your life. 1 Corinthians 4:2 says, those who have been called to be managers must prove faithful. So what does faithful look like? And I'm trying to tell you little glimpses of what faithful looks like in each area of your life. Leading teams, you're looking for 4 different types of people. Number 1, you're looking for people with a specific kind of potential value. Potential value. They may not be there yet, but man, you can see the future and you can pour into them and it will be a good ROI in your time. They may be 17, they may be 14, but you know there is a great ROI on your time to pour into people with potential value. And don't lie to yourself on that, I think they might have potential value just because you're desperate and need a hire. No, ask yourself, do they really have potential value? Number 2, positivity value. People that are just, Travis Ray is all 4 of these to me, but the positivity value, I just want to be around Travis Ray. I literally, when I wake up in the morning, I'm discouraged. It's 5 a.m. I'm just on speed dial. I'm like, dude, give me something. Yeah. I've got Jesus, I have Bang, and I have Travis. It's the Trinity. Yes. Number 3, some kind of personal value. Okay, like personal value. There is a connection there. There's something that feels real. I felt it with Corey when he was speaking just now, that Stephanie was that for him. I could sense it in the room that she, by her being here, that there was a personal value, like a value add of her being here as a supportive wife, right? So like, what kind of personal value of people do you want around you? Last one is just flat out production value. These are people that can flat out get stuff done. I call them GCD directors, get crap done. You just want those people on your team. And man, if you can get a mixture of all those, so good. Here's a little caveat to the potential value. I wrote this down in my notes. I was kind of dissecting this. I'm like, is this really true? And I told myself, well, there's a caveat to potential value. They have to be an 8 or above on potential value if they're below a 5 in the rest. So if they are not, they're sucking, they're negative, they're not positive, so they're on the lesser scale. If they have no personal value, if they have no production value, they're below 5, and they're that much of a drain, the potential value is not worth it. All right, that was free. All right, so my last 10%, this is really, I'm going to fly through this. This is really when you get into the note taking, because what I'm about to relay to you, because of what my experience in the last 7 years or so, I've had the opportunity to sit down with some of the stewardship giants in the space when it comes to leading stewardship in churches, and ask them the question, what are your number one learnings throughout your ministry career when it comes to stewardship? So we're talking, this is content directly from John Maxwell, Chris Hodges, Robert Morris, and Bill Hybels. That they kind of know what they're talking about. So I'm going to relay this to you. So this is several questions. I asked them the question, what are your top learnings in your career? So number one, when you're leading, okay, remember I told you I was going to break this into two parts. One was going to be for you, and the other part was going to be you leading. So if you want to lead stewardship, and this is a little bit more tied straight to lead pastors or campus pastors, but I also think that you guys, if you really are leading a team and you're stewarding them well, you literally are leading the whole person, not what they do. You just use the task to build people. You're not using people to do a task. It's a big difference. So hopefully you're pouring into them and you're leading them all at 360-degree discipleship. Number one is people want to know stuff. People want to know stuff. If you want to, from donor development standpoint, and you want to win in this area, people want to know stuff. Central does this really well, where they want to know where the money's being spent. They just do. A lot of churches, a lot of people in today's world are not going to church because they don't trust. They think the church is crooks. They think they're crooks. So they need to know stuff. Now, the danger is when your church is big as Central, the numbers are so big that now they disenfranchise themselves with the numbers. They don't know how to even process numbers that big. So it's really important, once you get in that area and you can feel that, it's so much over someone's annual budget as a person, then you got to use percentages. But people want to know stuff. And so I would strongly encourage you to, if you don't have some kind of annual report or some kind of quarterly thing, or just like 1 or 2 minutes in each service of like the latest, just quick hitters, just like in passing or in a teaching, and so that's why we give 32% to outreach or whatever it may be, and you just kind of sprinkle those in, that will go a long way with your congregation. Number 2, people will sacrifice. People will sacrifice. Bill Hybels went on to say that we raised $11 million, an $11 million campaign, raised all 11 right during the 2008 recession. He's like, people will sacrifice, they want to. Just like Corey said, it's not a volunteer problem, it's a vision problem. It's not a giving problem, it's a vision problem. People want to be a part of something huge. They do want to give. People will sacrifice. Don't lie to yourself and believe the lie that people will not sacrifice. They will. Next. People need routine stewardship coaching on this specifically, on earning as much as they can. What? What did he just say? They need teaching on the fact that they need to earn all they can. It's actually good stewardship. Now, we've talked a little about stewardship for a couple minutes now, so you guys get it. But you have to teach to earn all they can. One of the best ever quotes for stewardship. I don't know if you guys have one of those in your mind, like the best stewardship quote ever. Maybe you didn't put it under that umbrella, but you're like, man, that one was really good. One is John Wesley. You guys remember what it is? is earn as much money as you can, save as much as you can, and give as much as you can. It's all in the same quote. You're like, how's that even possible, right? Earn as much as you can. That's really, really important that you earn as much as you can. So you've got to teach people how to maximize their income and how to maximize their gifts for God's glory. Yes. You know, when it comes to tithing, the guy who says that he has everything he needs with 100% and he needs 100% to live on thinks the one that said that all I need is 90% to live on thinks they're an idiot, right? And the person that lives on 90% thinks the person that said they had to have all 100% thinks they're an idiot. You got to ask yourself, what kind of idiot do you want to be? It's like, which one do you want to be? And you got to know that you know that you know that you know that you believe in the obedience of tithing, and you got to teach that to your congregation. Number, I think it's 4. People know if your teaching stewardship is for them or for you. People will know, they will be able to pick up on the fact of you're teaching stewardship for them or for you. So make sure your heart is right before you ever teach people on how to manage money. People demand and deserve total transparency from the church. So if you know that, you need to proactively, first of all, feel really good about your percentages, and then you got to make sure that they know. This is straight from them too. Most of the congregation would benefit from a financial curriculum. There's probably, they said most, and of course I wanted to, at the time I was working with Dave Ramsey, and so I was like, no, it's all. It is most. I think there's probably 10% that could probably teach it, are pretty good at it. And I would just say those 10%, that you need to ask them to use their gift and to be a part of it to bring everyone else on the journey, and they could be teachers. But being part of a financial curriculum. So ask yourself at your church, do we have that? And again, I'll go back, this stings a little bit, but I would say that's negligence if you're not doing that. Money touches every aspect of our life. It's 2,350 verses, so if you don't have something available for them to take the next step, then something's wrong. People love to give to vision most. I'm not going to spend much time there because I think that's something that we probably already know. But they love to give to vision most, not needs. They like to hear the vision. They want to be part of something big. People like appreciation coming their way from time to time. There's going to be a few people that are like, man, I just do it for Jesus. I don't want to thank you. They do. That's called passive. That's just passivity. But they do. They want to be thanked. And I would just say that from a donor development standpoint, stewardship standpoint, when you're leading all this stuff, if you don't recognize the fact that that's a gift to earn money, to save, to invest, to be generous, you don't recognize the gift. Remember, what gets rewarded gets repeated. So it's like, if you don't reward that and you don't honor that, it's just as much of a gift as it is for volunteering or serving. So make sure that you appreciate people from time to time. I'm so small right now at the well. Man, you give $4. I'm calling you 17 times within an hour and thanking you. Yeah, I'm on the phone nonstop, just like, thank you. You're awesome. You have no idea what this does for us. So and take advantage of your stage of development. Those of you that are smaller churches, get on the phone with every person who gives. Just use that transaction as an excuse to connect with them. Have an offsite. This one's huge. This one's gonna hit you different. Have an offsite where the team can totally reset the vision for the need of a stewardship ministry in your church. I know that right now I feel like I'm Dave Ramsey. I just feel like you need to have a stewardship ministry. I truly do believe in it. I really do. The number one competition in the church today is not other churches. It's Visa. The bottom line is everything you're asking people to do, they can't do. They're walking all jacked up. They're as jacked up as Corey was, and they walked off. They're like, oh, so excited, and they're leaving. They want to do things for God, and they can't. They're handcuffed. They want to so bad. Some of them would want to come here today. They're working 5 jobs. Couldn't come. They just can't. And I feel bad for them. Where there is no margin, there's no ministry. You can be intentioned for a lot of things. But being intentioned for ministry is nothing without being positioned for ministry. So you've got to be in position. So you've got to do that through a stewardship ministry. How do you get started with that? Literally just start having classes And then you got to have like a next step in place when you start the classes for them to go to something else. And you're going to create community within that. Now, Robert Morris is famous for saying something. Those of you that don't know these people, that's fine, but just trust me on the fact that they know this, they've studied this stuff. Well, I guess I'm probably one of them. I've studied like 50 books on this. But they literally have done this in church at a mass scale for a long time. But Robert Morris has said, I have not taught on giving but 1 or 2 times a year for 20 years. However, they're like, on a giving perspective, like let's just say they're running 20,000 and they probably should have a $30 or $40 million budget. They have a $150 million budget. Why? And they're like, how did you do that? And he was like, well, obviously God's got his hand on it, right? Everything that Mitch said, God's got his hand on that. He's got a specific gift for him, for sure. But on top of that, it's not about like going to get big givers. It's not that either. But he doesn't teach about tithing a lot. You're like, how? You don't teach about tithing a lot? You don't teach about giving a lot? But how does that even happen? He says, I teach on stewardship 52 weeks a year. Everything that I teach about, what I'm talking about praying or I'm talking about marriage, or it all goes back to that definition of managing everything you're doing. So when I said go back to the why, go back to the why, go back to any kind of topic in church. Think about anything. What's the why? What's the why? It goes back to the fact the reason why we're here is he gave us dominion in Genesis, right? Dominion over, like we are here to manage for him. That's what it's all about. So he teaches that every single week. So everything they're doing, they're more inspired to do it, not because they're going to have a better marriage. Yes, they're going to have a better marriage, but that's not their main why. Their main why is I want to manage this relationship for God. And so there's a higher calling than just like I want to have a better marriage. It's deeper than that. I'm managing this relationship for the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That's the highest why you could ever have for anything. It is the why. People give to results. I have on my whiteboard, that is the next thing that was said. This was like 6 years ago. But I have something on my whiteboard at the church, and it's a Lynn Bruce quote. And I've got several. One, he says, all giving is through relationships. I steal these from Lynn every time I talk to him. And I tell him I steal them, but his name's on there and everything. But all giving is connected to relationships. Another one is people give to 2 things. People give to 2 things. And those of you that aren't lead pastors, take this concept, right, and use it for your context, okay? People engage for 2 things, right? People serve for 2 things. People give for 2 things. Number 1, there are 2 R's, reliability and results. Reliability, and it always goes back to those 2 R's. So you got to ask yourself, how well am I communicating those 2 things? How much can people trust me? Trust. You've heard the Stephen Covey quote, organizations travel at the speed of trust. Relationships travel at the speed of trust. Your giving and your ministry will travel at the speed of trust. So how much can they rely on you? And then how many results are there? Now, going back to Corey's talk, there's a lot of parallels here. The evaluation piece. Many times we have these great moments in ministry, but we never do the follow-up and celebrate it. You may have results, but no one knows it. How many times have you communicated the results of what God is doing? I had to get on our student team last week and said we had, for us, the number was big. We're not even a church yet, and we have 40 on Wednesday nights for students. And we had somebody get saved, somebody wants to get baptized. There was tons of energy, tons of fun games, great study, like lots of people taking their steps. And on Thursday morning debrief, I was like, hey, did anyone get one picture? Like any video, any testimonies, anything, like even a quote, nothing, just missed it. Well, how do I tell stakeholders? How do I tell? I'm nothing except for just like very like I don't have anything to give you. Right? It'd be nice to be able to show you a little video or something like that, but nothing. Remember, people give to results, and you've got to be able to communicate those results. Last one, rarely teach on money. I don't think it's a never, but they said I've learned over the years, I just mix in stewardship into everything, and that takes care of the money. Now, I do think it's negligence not to teach on it occasionally, but don't feel like you have to teach about it all the time. And always teach about how to manage the 100%, not the 10%. If you manage the 100%, well, that includes the 10%, but it's deeper than just a tithe. Then when you just teach on the tithe only, if it's not part of a series and it's just a standalone, it's just for that, it sounds very, very self-serving. But if you really care about them stewarding for God's glory, you really care about the 100%. not just the 10%. So that's just what God's been working on me, especially that how I'm stewarding the rest of my life, my mind, my soul, my heart, and my body especially, because I'm like really feeling convicted about that. So I just want to share what God was doing in my heart. So.